Live here on a Tuesday night, the 6th of October. I almost said the 6th of May, but it's the 6th of October 2020, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. As we go from dealing with absolutely nothing, Mr. Rayo, to what looked like it may be a smooth sail through the holiday weekend. Now we have, of course, a Category 4 hurricane, Hurricane Delta, who may even wind up getting to a Category 5 the way it's going. The risk for rain here later in the holiday weekend seems to be going up with every passing model run. And we have a wind advisory up for tomorrow afternoon into Thursday morning. So,
I'm kind of wondering whether or not a wind advisory would really be bad. I was thinking, what would be at least up here in the Hudson Valley, we also are under a wind advisory
right.
for tomorrow too. And I say, what would be the strongest winds we'd see here? And I'd say maybe a gust or two upwards to 35 to 40. I think that's not quite at criteria level, but I guess the folks over at the Weather Service just decided let's broad brush the whole area just for the sake
Well,
of.
they're pushing gusts of 45 to 55.
I'm not 55. I don't think is going to happen. 45. All right. I did see a couple of RPM runs that suggested, for example, that Newburgh might get up as high as 43. But I think in
Right.
general, we're looking at 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts, which is still fairly potent. In fact, I'll tell you how potent it is. My back and front lawn, most of the lawn was covered already with gold and yellow leaves that have fallen. And I mulched them in this afternoon. I said, I might as well get rid of these leaves now because a ton more are coming down between now and the end of the day tomorrow. So
Yeah, you
no
mu
question about it. We are going to be in a gusty breeze tomorrow.
you you I don't know if you know this. It was alerted to me earlier today, but apparently something's going on at the Upton office in New York that required them to. I don't know if they took the system down there for one reason or another, or if there's some sort of something going on. But Boston is doing the forecast for Upton
Oh, really?
For the New York zones.
You know, I didn't realize that. I didn't look at the forecast specifically, but I did notice that they said that KW035 might be off the air for a while today.
Yeah, so they must be
So,
doing some sort of full house maintenance, I guess. I ought to ask Bill Goodman what's going on because he messaged me earlier, but I didn't even get a chance to answer him back. So that could be the reason, maybe the wind advisory, because Boston put up a high wind watch for a good chunk of Massachusetts and for southeastern New England. So I guess maybe they're thinking, and Albany did the Albany zones, unless Albany was also, maybe Boston was doing both of them. I don't know. But I do know that they're doing the Upton zones.
all right.
So,
Well, you know, I would think that though, if you live in this area and have been doing the weather for a while, you might know a few things about the climate overall that a person who is outside of the area, just arbitrarily would look at the date and say, "Oh, well, we're going to do this and that or whatever." But it's better safe than sorry. It will
yeah,
be a dusty day tomorrow,
particularly
especially
in the
during the afternoon.
afternoon and into tomorrow night. I guess they're looking at. I think they're looking at that low going up through northern New England, where there might be some showers and maybe even a thunderstorm or two in the mix there. And the low strengthening, the upper trough swinging around, the gradient gets a little bit tight. So I'm thinking that that's the mindset. The winds are going to gust from the southwest before the cold front comes through, and it's
Right,
coming through pretty
right.
quick. So that, and maybe there's I didn't get a chance to give a good look at the whole upper air profile. Maybe the winds are stronger aloft, and they're expecting some of that to mix down to the surface. Perhaps that's the mindset. I don't want to want everybody to think that we're not completely unprepared for the show tonight. But I've been spending a lot of time looking with what's going on with Hurricane Delta. And Joe, one of the things over the years, watching some of these major hurricanes when they develop, when they start off going from a tropical storm to a Category 3 hurricane in about 30 hours, you got it seems you have those storms seem to just be absolutely determined to get down to the lowest pressure they possibly can. And you've seen that over the years with some of the big ones. They just sit there and then they explode, and nothing seems to stop it. And there are times when you look at some of the I don't think it's the case this time around, because everything right now is just lined up perfectly for it to just keep intensifying. But in those instances, you could look at you look at what's going on, and you think that, okay, well, it'll get strong, but there's some limit here, there's some upside limit. Uh, this one wants to go, and it might get to us. It's going to be a strong 4 when it touches the Yucatan Peninsula, and
Yucatan Peninsula had in 2005 with Wilma. Wilma got to 150 mile per hour. That is the strongest hurricane that has ever affected the Yucatan. And now here we are in yet another exceedingly intense hurricane season. Once again, the Yucatan is being threatened. And once again, it looks like it's going to be threatened by a very, very potent system, which may challenge Wilma's 150 mile per hour record if it all falls into place.
Yep. All right. Big hello to everybody on the chat board tonight. If you're watching and you're new to this channel, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which, by the way, you can also listen to as a podcast, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Radio Podcasts, and a whole host of places where podcasts call home. And this way, if you can't watch the show, you could always just stick your earbuds in, get on your treadmill or your bicycle, and listen to us pontificate on the weather ahead. So let us now pontificate, shall we?
It's a $5 word.
I know, yes, it is. Well, I have a Walmart next door to me here at the hotel, so
We have another meteorologist. We have on the chat board. We have my wife, who is indeed a meteorologist.
yes, Mrs. Rayo is on. She's monitoring us very carefully.
And she says Delta's sudden intensification was a real surprise! Exclamation point. I feel for those folks down in the Louisiana coast. How many times? I think I heard somewhere that this is the 6th time that Louisiana, maybe not a direct hit, but the 6th time that they have been in the cone of uncertainty of a tropical cyclone
Yeah.
in just this season alone. It's unbelievable.
Every year, every hurricane season, no matter how active or inactive they are, there's always one geographic area that seems to be the target. And in a busy season, you're obviously going to get multiple opportunities to be the target, and Louisiana is definitely been the pick. So we're going to start off. We're going to take a look at the latest satellite loop, and the I have yet to see, Joe, because it's so small in terms of the eye. The Hurricane Center has mentioned in the discussion that there's been a pinprick eye 5 nautical miles in diameter. And that's another thing that tells you that this thing is winding up. When they get eyes when the eye diameter is that tight, it's telling you that the gradient is just incredibly tight over the scope of the entire storm. And I know Johnny Quest sent me a question about that. What causes it? Well, you have to sort of look at what's going on in terms of everything else around it. The entire pressure field across the Gulf states and down into the western Gulf of Mexico, and over the storm itself, you've got this incredible deepening going on. The character of this storm with the dynamics involved is causing the eye to just be minuscule. And I think, Joe, if this keeps up, we're gonna get that buzzsaw look, because it looks like it's on its way there.
I've mentioned a couple of times over the years here on Joe and Joe, there was one storm in the mid 70s, 75, I think it was, Hurricane Gladys in the Atlantic basin, that looked like a cotton ball with a pinprick in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And it had incredibly strong winds up until, I guess, Gilbert or Gloria. Gladys was the winner in terms of extreme sustained winds and also central pressure.
939.
Yeah.
When it went by us.
Right. So you're right. When they get to be that type of storm, very compact and also with the pinprick eye, that is one to stay clear of.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the folks on along the Gulf Coast once again are watching this very carefully. Again, another major threat for that part of the country.
If you think back to Sunday's show, those of you on the chat board, and by the way, I should mention too that Joe Rayo monitors the chat board through all of this. So if you've got questions, put them on there, and we will try to address them. We mentioned on Sunday's show that when we're looking at the upper air with all of this, that the upper air with Gamma, if you remember, Gamma was to the west and over the northern part of the Yucatan Peninsula. We were dealing with strong southwesterly shear going on, strong southwesterly winds in the upper atmosphere going on in the western Gulf of Mexico, and a ton of dry air that was over there, and Gamma got ripped apart. And one of the puzzle pieces in all of this was that you could see that there was going to be development with Delta, with what became Tropical Storm Delta. The question was whether the two circulations, how they were going to interact with each other, and weather models were having a really difficult time with it. You saw some of the models kind of, even the European in particular, just completely ignored Delta, was showing Gamma, but just basically did nothing with it right through, at least through the run that I saw on Sunday. What wound up happening, one of the possibilities was that Delta circulation, once it got strong enough, it was basically going to just, there wouldn't be any room, and it just completely overwhelmed the entire scope across the Gulf of Mexico and in the West Central and Western Caribbean. It just completely took over, and you can still see the what's left of the moisture from Gamma now basically has become the element to saturate the atmosphere. That was the big problem, Joe. We had a lot of dry air in the Gulf of Mexico. The models were showing the dry air disappearing and that the Gulf of Mexico was going to moisten up. It turns out that a lot of that moisture has been provided by what is left of Gamma, and Delta's just kind of completely taken over. We need names for these storms. I can't do
You know,
this. I
how
can't.
ironic. How ironic. We ran out of names, proper names for the storms. We went to the Greek alphabet, and yet Delta, if I'm not mistaken, Delta could be a woman's name, right?
Yes. Well, I thought about that um, from Designing Women. If we
Delta Burke,
Delta Burke, if you recall.
right,
I
right.
have a hurricane loop here of the tight view of Delta, and still not seeing. I can't see I can't see an eye in this yet. It must be just absolutely. And I went on. I took the floater because it's so tight, and watching Joe, looking at the way the clouds are behaving, you're starting to see that feathering that's going on north of Cuba and into the Gulf of Mexico. It still looks like something that's continuing to organize. I kind of saw a little bit, it looked like a little bit of an eye on the first couple of frames, really, really tiny. But uh, the thing we're going to be looking ahead now is for eyewall replacement cycles, because that will probably, that's going to put an end to the rapid deepening at some point, and you're going to have to replace the eyewall. So when does that take place? Does it take place? No sign of it occurring yet, according to the Hurricane Center. Does that take place before it reaches the northeastern corner of the Yucatan Peninsula? I don't know. And if it doesn't take place before then, you're going to take this in pretty much at full strength.
Right, right. And I would suppose even the slightest little interaction with land might help to either stabilize or drop the central winds down a few notches, but it's still a very, very potent storm. And the other thing I noticed, Joe, on the storm track and projection of intensity is they lower it from a 4 to a 3, and then all of a sudden they go back to a 4 for a short while before driving it back to a 3 before landfall along the Gulf Coast on Friday. So I don't know how to, I guess it's teetering on the brink between a very strong 3 and a 4 for them to do that.
Right.
Of course, we've always said that the most difficult thing for any of the forecasters to try to attempt is how strong these things get, and be it a 3 or a 4, it's still a storm that's loaded for bear.
Well, I think the Hurricane Center is struggling with a couple of things in the longer term. One is, they talked about the fact that the shelf water in the northern Gulf, where the waters close to the coastline this time of year, tend to cool relatively quickly. So that would be an inhibiting factor with regards to strengthening, but that's no guarantee. And the other thing is, you can have that cool shelf water if this thing, when it gets into the Gulf, doesn't slow down and starts moving at, say, if it's moving at 18 or 20 knots when it's approaching the coast, its time over that shelf water is going to be absolutely minimal. So,
Right.
and that is, I think they're struggling with that. They're struggling with the fact that they keep seeing some of the models showing some wind shear developing as it approaches the coast. But we've seen instances where models have done that, and it hasn't actually been real. Remember, they did it, doing it with Hurricane Michael. I think it was showing up also with Hurricane Laura earlier this year. I put up the enhanced satellite here so that we can, sometimes you can see the eye better on the enhanced, and actually you do see it kind of pop up on the floater here a little bit. I'll try to get really tight. It comes and goes. It's just really fascinating. I am going to be really curious. This is going to be interesting to see how intense this gets. The other thing that the Hurricane Center mentioned, Joe, is the fact that once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, particularly as it starts to make its approach toward the central Gulf Coast, is that it will probably expand in size. So you're going to see a rather large hurricane here. So even if it does come off its peak, you are going to have a storm that is going to be whose circulation is going to cover a good portion of the Gulf, and that's going to create some storm surge issues when this makes landfall. So there's always pluses and minuses with these sorts of things, and this is going to be a tough one to resolve.
Right. And if there's a silver lining to this, Joe, the silver lining is that it's happening now or in the next couple of days and not happening about the middle of next week. The middle of next week, we're going to have what in some circles is known as a Proxygen or Proxygen Moon. And that is that the moon is going to be new. It's going to be turning new on October 16th. But this particular new moon is going to come within less than 4.5 hours of the perigee point in its orbit. In fact, the moon's distance on October 16th, next Thursday, I believe, is going to be 221,700. Is it Thursday? What the 16th is? Today is what?
Today's the 6th, so Thursday's the 8th. So yeah, so wait, so
So
today's the 6th, Thursday's the 8th, next Thursday's the 15th.
So Friday.
So
So
Friday's the
October,
16th.
right. So Friday the 16th, yeah, it'll be at 221,775 miles away, which is only 3 miles farther away than the so-called supermoon of last April. So it's a very, very close new moon. And because the moon is on the same side of the Earth as the sun is, the lineup is sun, moon, and Earth. So we have the combination of both the sun and the moon pulling on our tides, the so-called spring tides.
Right.
And for those of you who went through earth science, you may remember in the discussion in earth science about eclipses and tides, tidal force varies as the inverse cube of the object's distance. So this month, the moon is going to be 14% closer than the full moon that we're going to have at the end of this month. Therefore, that new moon next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday, would exert a 48% more tidal force than the spring tides that will come with the full moon at the end of this month. So we're very lucky, I guess, in a way that if you have to have a hurricane, have it now, get out of the way, because if it had waited a week while we had this enormous close new moon situation, the tides would have been just unbelievable,
Right.
much far higher than anything I think anybody has ever seen. You don't want to have a major tropical system coincide with those kind of tides, and that will be coming again a week from Friday. So again, if we're going to have a storm of this magnitude, let's have it now, get it out of the way before the tides really start picking up during the middle and latter part of next week with that incredibly close new moon.
Unless, of course, there's something else behind this. which
Oh,
we
yes.
which we'll take a look at a little later.
All right.
So in the meantime, let's go through. There's a reconnaissance aircraft on its way there now to check it out. So what we'll do is I'm going to look at these now, and then at the end of the show, toward the end of the show, we'll come back to get them updated. So the latest aircraft is nowhere close yet. Judging from the winds that have been, what they're reporting so far, their pressures are still up above like 1,004, so they're still not there yet. And just on the
And
flight pick,
I have a feeling a few of the guys in that aircraft are probably saying, "Thank God we're not there yet."
yeah,
Past the Dramamine.
the plane is roughly a 20 and a half and about 86.2. So it still has a good distance to get to. It's got to get down to like 17, 18
Right.
before it really gets into the core. So, and that core is very, very tight. So we'll check it out again a little bit later on. So the hurricane tracking models are very close, obviously, with the landfall coming soon. For the northeastern Yucatan Peninsula, you'd expect that all the models will be almost on top of each other, which they are. And while they start to spread out a little bit when they go into the northern Gulf for the latter part of the week, so we're talking about 72 hours would be Friday afternoon, where the 72-hour points are. Uh, so that's Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. You are seeing the points wide, but they're not that wide. The easternmost model is sitting over New Orleans. The westernmost model is about, I guess, somewhere between Lafayette and Lake Charles, and everybody else is somewhere in between. So the Hurricane Center usually winds up taking the midpoint of all of this. The once inland, the systems move northeastward, and you do have a bunch of them that take it up the west side of the Appalachians. There's one that turns it straight east and takes it off the North Carolina coast. That seems to be the outlier. The other models don't really go out beyond 120 hours. So, but the ones that do all seem to be taking some kind of remnant low to our west. The thing is, we're going to have an onshore flow here with a high to the north, and that's going to probably increase the moisture field. So it'll be interesting to see if we wind up getting rain out of this. And I think we're going to get something. Just exactly how much rain we get out of this remains to be seen.
It's interesting, though, that the model that really didn't see this a couple of days ago, that was putting more of an interest on gamma and not showing this at all, the vaunted European model. And now, of course, we can see that the European really missed the boat on this.
Yes.
And now the European is also the model that, if you want to look ahead to next week, late in the holiday weekend, it is a holiday weekend, it's a Columbus Day weekend. The European is keeping all moisture out of here. Does not have, for the tri-state area, any precipitation through the end of the day Monday, whereas the GFS spills that moisture in and over us during the day on Monday and suggested we could have a wet Columbus Day. So take your pick. So far, the GFS has done a lot more or a lot better with this system from the get-go than the European.
I would just say with respect to the models going back days ago that they all were struggling in one way or another with the fact that you had what appeared to be two circulations relatively close, where they all went down the tubes until the GFS was really the first one to figure out that no, Delta was going to be the real deal and just take over. Whereas the other models were very slow on the uptake with regards to that, but they all were struggling with the idea of having a tropical storm sitting at 90 west and then another tropical system coming up through the Yucatan Channel, within several hundred miles. The two lows would be several hundred miles apart. One of them would have to give, and as it turned out, it's Gamma that gave way. Delta completely taking over. Here's something you don't see very often, Joe, and that is the hurricane intensity models. And I was struck today by when I saw this earlier, and we've had a couple of runs since then. But every single intensity model, even the weakest of the intensity models, has this as a category 3. And the vast majority, well, right now, all of them have it as a Category 4. We have one, two, three, four of these intensity models strengthening it to a Category 5. And one of them actually carries it as a Category 5, I assume, right until landfall, with still a Category 5 at 84 hours. So that would be, if the timing is according to what the Hurricane Center has, landfall sometime Friday evening. It has it coming down. It actually, Joe, it's got to be. This is really crazy because the one this, I'm chuckling because the one model on the intensity model plot
195 is
190 knots.
yeah.
Okay, so I mean it's really off the wall here with regards to its number. It seems like that's a bit much. Okay, that's a it's one of those things that when you get some of these storms that wind up really pushing the extreme, when you're looking at it a couple of days before, you feel. I'm not predicting at all that model is right with the 190 knots, but this we're at a point now where we know we're dealing with a very intense feature. Where the final upside is, I don't know.
I just did a quickie calculation. 190 knots is equal to 218.5 miles per hour.
Nice. So okay, folks. So just to be clear, neither Joe or I are forecasting this thing go to 190 knots. Okay, we're not. I'm just showing you that there is a model out there that is doing that. But the thing is, these intensity models, you always try to look to see where are the most of them, where are they clustered at? That's and they're all clustered inside the Category 4 range, which is formidable enough. So you're going to push it up. If it winds up pushing up into a Category 5, we'll see. The storm will tell us, and the recon reports will also tell us. So on the last advisory at 5 o'clock, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. The last advisory at 5 o'clock, 18.9 north, 84.1 west. The Hurricane Center is carrying 145 miles an hour, so it's not that far away, moving west-northwest at 17. They were carrying a pressure of 956 from the old recon, the old reconnaissance aircraft report. So we'll get a new number soon, and they do have it as a major Friday afternoon in that spot off the Louisiana coast offshore. Uh, so they're thinking that maybe it weakens a little bit as it makes the final landfall, but it's still going to be. I mean, this is still going to be a powerhouse no matter what. And then, of course, you see the positions for Saturday and 2 p.m. Sunday. It's somewhere south of Nashville as a remnant depression. And of course, again, we go to the question of whether the rain shield from this is going to wind up coming our way. I still think that I'm thinking that the risk is growing, but it's only Tuesday. We should wait a couple more days to see if indeed we're going to have this carry up northeastward, or is it going to just kind of get deflected eastward? We'll figure that out in the next couple.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
What else can you possibly say after all of that? And if it does get to 190 knots, we apologize, Louisiana.
Right. Oh God. All right. So here's the upper air with all of this. If you're wondering just exactly how this is all coming about with respect to the upper air, one of the things you always look for is an upper air anticyclone or high, and just rolling back with all of this. And I'm going back now to Sunday where gamma is there. Okay. What we had at this point was the disturbed weather that was delta, and you will find it. It was inside this area of in the blue and the white. Though that is indicative of light upper air winds. Now, gamma, on the other hand, was dealing with this mess in the western Gulf of Mexico, where that whole big area of red. That's 40 knots of shear from the southwest. And gamma ran into that and just kind of got ripped apart. And of course, as the system that winds up developing into delta starts to suddenly explode, and you see it here yesterday afternoon, the 998 low. If you can see it, those light, those arrows That's showing you the wind flow at 200 millibars. So we're looking up at about, say, 30,000 feet roughly. And that is there is an upper air high or an anticyclone right over the center. And what's important about this is A, there's no wind shear, no appreciable wind shear, and the fact that with the upper air anticyclone, the upper high over it, you are creating an excellent outflow mechanism. And here is, as it deepens and moves west northwestward, and remember now, we're at Tuesday afternoon where we had a 956 pressure and the GFS here has a 978. You have this very, very strong upper air high. Now notice what's happened in the Western Gulf, that all that shear, all the strong southwesterly winds retreating back to Texas and into the inland areas of the Gulf states, which leaves Delta. Joe, look at how big this upper air high is. I mean, this is really crazy. But I mean, it's huge. This is all anticyclonic flow here in the highest levels of the atmosphere. It's got this huge upper high sitting over the storm. No wonder it's doing what it's doing. And as we move it into the Gulf of Mexico, it holds on to that upper high. Although, again, when we start to turn it up toward the coastline, you see that shear that's going on, the stronger southwest winds in East Texas. And then the model starts to develop some stronger winds over. So you don't know if that's actual wind shear or if that's the storm itself reflecting that. So you got to be really careful here with trying to figure out exact intensity with the time of landfall. And the models, it gets it down in the Gulf. It gets it down to a 958. Well, guess what? It's already past. It's already been underneath that. So you got to figure that the models are going to play a little bit of catch up here when it comes to the lowest pressure.
It and even though we have on the official excuse me on the official guidance models possible landfall in Louisiana, I'm sure that the folks along the Texas Gulf Coast are keeping a very, very sharp eye out for any uncertain or any unexpected moves further to the west,
Right.
which may play into our dear friend Addison Green, who is in Houston, Texas. I'm sure that the powers that be at the television station he's at telling him and telling all the meteorologists, look, even though it's not officially coming this way, let's make sure that we keep everybody posted because you never know. And that's the truth with these kind of storm systems sometimes.
Right. So on the latest run, the global models are all close to those hurricane tracking models. We're not going to really see too much difference here. You see the landfall. This is at 0Z Saturday, so this is at 8 o'clock Friday night, coming in southeast Louisiana. I'm going to pull up. And by the way, special thanks to Levi Cowan of Tropical Tidbits for his wonderful maps that we're able to look at all these different models to try to help us along with all of this. I'm going to pull up the HWRF because
see what you're showing right now. Well, actually, you're not showing it now. You showed it about 30 seconds ago. The GFS average precipitation rate map, and you were looping it, Joe. And at one particular point in that, as you're moving it along, it looked for all the world like it was going to head right for the Texas-Louisiana border, and then all of a sudden it does that curve or turn to the northeast. And what I'm saying is that sometimes on sheer, if the thing is moving fast enough, on sheer momentum, yeah, it could just it may continue on that course for just a little while longer and really scare the whats out of anyone who lives near the Texas Louisiana border. Not to say that this is not going to be a potent storm along the Texas Gulf Coast as well, but I mean, I'm talking about significant major landfall, tidal flooding, the whole 9 yards. That seems to be targeting the Louisiana coast, not necessarily the Texas coast.
Right now, the HWRF model, which loves to make Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes all the time. Even with the weakest systems, it likes it has overdone things. But this time around, at least it's the closest one. As for this afternoon at 2 o'clock, it had a 951 pressure being indicated. It actually takes it down as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula to a 933. which would be a Cat 5 or close to a Cat 5, then it weakens a little bit. It fills a little bit to the midnight to about 9:51 until it comes out the other side. It's going to only cross a minimal amount of land, by the way. And then once it's in the Gulf, it gets back down to a 9:33, 32, 9:30, and it's a 9:30 pressure when it's at 25.6 and 92.8. And then it starts to come up a little bit so that by the time it reaches the Louisiana coast, it's about a 9:51, which would still be a strong three or a I hate to use the phrase weak four, um, but
What's anything
yeah, I mean
before?
that's almost, it sounds ridiculous to say it.
And that's I was having that problem before when I said that it was going to be a strong category 3, and I said I was going to say something like that, a week 4, but how do you say a week 4 for like 145-mile-per-hour winds? It's crazy.
Now here's the HMON model. And by the way, when you look at these things, just bear in mind that what happens is, the storm stays at the center of the picture and the geography moves. So it can kind of freak you out a little bit when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the real motion here? But the HMON is supposed to be a model that you sort of look at. And these are 18Z runs, by the way. This is a new 18Z run HMON model that's coming out. So it's got a 949 pressure that it doesn't really get much deeper as it goes onto the coast of the Yucatan, fills to about a 964. And then when it's in the Gulf, it gets down to a 44. So here it is at this point in the Gulf of Mexico. It's at 25.3 and about 92.7. So it's a 944 pressure. Gets to a 38, 39 as it approaches 28 north. And then by the time it gets to the coast, it's about it's a 945 when it's approaching the coast, Joe. And then it's a 953 once it's inland. So it's showing those pressures coming up a little bit. And what you're seeing, by the way, the purple and red, that's uh, what the wind field is supposed to look like. So the purple is 64 knots. All the purple is the extent of hurricane force winds. So you have a very large area of hurricane force winds approaching the coastline. And of course, once it's inland, you see the wind field does, obviously the wind field does weaken a bit, but you get the idea. All the models have some kind of major coming on shore to all the hurricane models seem to have a major coming ashore on the Louisiana coastline, and it's maybe west of New Orleans again, which for my friends in New Orleans, that's a great thing if that happens. But it's
Right.
not good for the folks that live further to the west, obviously. And will the Hurricane Center has I don't know, did they put up, I didn't look on the advisory, Joe, did they put up, did you happen to see it, if they put up, well, I don't think they put watches up yet, but they're going to
I
do
don't
it
think so.
if they have. They're going to do it very soon. We're at the point now, so they're going to have to do it very very soon. So just to go,
Unfortunately, all of the nonsense that's going on in the world today has kind of been, I mean, in a normal situation, 5, 10, 15 years ago, potential category 4 to make landfall at Weeksand along Gulf Coast, that would have been near the top of the news. And I, watching the evening news tonight, the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell, for example, had to wait like 15 or 17 minutes into the news
right.
before there was a mention of this potentially cataclysmic storm coming for the Gulf Coast at the end of the week. It's a crazy world that we're living in 2020.
I know the apocalypse is everywhere. So let's look at the upper air, because this is going to be really important with regards to what happens with regards to the rain getting here for the holiday weekend. By the way, we're people, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because a few people have asked me, a number of people have asked me, well, we're going to get rain, at some point over the holiday weekend, and that's the question that's front and center. Obviously, we're not going to get anything like what they're going to experience down in Louisiana, assuming that Delta maintains its strength. But right now, we of course we've got this strong upper trough, Joe, that's swinging through here, and going very very tight. I'm guessing that they're figuring that some of that is going to mix down, and the shortwave does strengthen a bit as it goes by. So I don't think we're going to see much in the way of any showers out of it, though. Those should stay up to our north. And uh, Delta, of course, is dealing with the fact sitting right there over the state of Florida. So it's moving around the periphery of that upper high, and you've got these northwest winds in the upper atmosphere, which which cover the Great Lakes, the Northeast, into the Mid-Atlantic states, which would be a shield for us, except that that's going to give way, and those westerlies are going to pull up. So as we go into the weekend, the question for me, Joe, is there's another short wave that's going to move through Saturday night into Sunday morning. That brings a cold front through here and builds a high to our north. The upper air winds, those westerly winds in the upper atmosphere, retreat up into Canada because there's a weak ridge that builds from the northern Great Lakes northward, and the remnant system of Delta winds up, moving underneath all that. So the question is, how much does it lift up the coast? And that I think is going to depend on the next trough that's coming into the west, because the GFS has it already in the eastern plains by Monday, and that might be enough to lift it more northeastward rather than shove it eastward.
My wife just made an announcement over the intercom, but I was concentrating on watching the map and listening to you, and so I have no clue. I have no idea what she was trying to tell me because I don't exactly have the intercom up at
Well, as long as she's
at a
not telling
very
you that the house is on
loud volume here. So
right. As long as she's not telling you
my
that the
wife
house
is
is on fire,
well.
okay, and you need to get
I don't
out.
smell smoke, so that not. But any case, yeah, absolutely everything that what you said, and I mean, look at that flow over the northeastern United States. That strong north, and that's the key right there to where Delta is going to go, and it appears that that upper air that the GFS is showing is a bit different than the upper air that the European is going, and
Which we could take
maybe
a
that's
look at.
why one model is projecting wet weather for us for the end of the holiday weekend, while the other is keeping us bone dry right on through Monday.
Well, this is Monday morning on the GFS, Monday morning on the
Right.
European.
Take a look at it, and you could see how that the flow becomes southwesterly, and any kind of moisture that we have is obviously going to be advected into our area by Monday, according to the GFS.
But the European still has northwest winds in the upper atmosphere from northern Virginia on up through New England. And it also has, it takes the bottom part of that trough out in the west and cuts it off in Colorado. So the short wave that represents what's left of Delta just kind of gets lost in the sauce here on the European. In fact, a big ridge builds up the East Coast early next week on the European going into Tuesday and Wednesday. So it kind of makes sense why the European doesn't seem to be doing what the GFS is.
We're back. We're back. Something I don't know what you're
I,
talking
I, I
about.
did get a message, by the way, that my internet was suddenly unstable.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Well,
so
I didn't see any kind of turbulence on my end, so I don't know.
okay, I'm going to make sure. I want to close. I'm going to close off a couple of these satellite loops so that
Close your windows, Joe.
exactly. So let me get rid of this, and let's get rid of this. Because if I have too many GIFs open, then sometimes it creates an issue. Yeah, I just got this. Yeah, I had gotten this instability warning, but hopefully everything seems to be a bit better. So let's just go back to what the models are doing. And the other thing I wanted to bring up in the longer range is with this trough that's coming into the west. We don't want to forget our friends out on the west coast who are waiting for, a good solid soaking rain, and I think they're going to see it come the weekend. But here's the full view of what's happening. So, our weather, of course, once this front goes by, we're going to get that cooler air, that chilly air for Thursday and Friday. Friday morning is going to be cold in the Northeast and down in the Mid-Atlantic states for this time of year. A lot of 30s and 40s everywhere. But we'll stay dry. At least we know that we're not going to get anything of consequence, certainly through Saturday and into Sunday. And then it'll be a matter of the high building into the north, how much does that lift? And of course, in the meantime, out in the west, you've got that all that energy coming in with heavy rain from Washington into Northern California, and that translates eventually east of the Rockies as that trough moves eastward, and another shortwave trough with some rains from Washington, Oregon, and Northern California for the first part of next week. But you see what the GFS does with the low moving up, the remnant low, which is just really, it's not really that important. It's the upper feature lifting northward that pushes up that rain. And on this run of the GFS, Joe, unlike the last couple of runs, which kind of brought the rain shield up to maybe somewhere between you and Albany, the northern fringe, now it seems to want to sweep that rain all the way up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York. The push on the GFS here is a bit stronger. We could take a look at the parallel GFS. How about we do that?
Sure.
So let's see the parallel GFS. Oh, this is not going to help us too much because apparently the last one was from 2 a.m. yesterday. 2 a.m. this morning. The parallel wasn't bringing this up, but now suddenly it's bringing it up as well. But it's slower. It doesn't get it here until Monday, during the day, Monday and Monday night, and it's still doing it Tuesday during the afternoon. So I don't know how real that is. It kind of holds on to that big high to the north. It doesn't really get it out of the way. So there's a lot of surface complications here that we're going to have to figure out. And I just don't think we're gonna know. If WPC is a clue on their latest forecast, Joe, they did increase the rain here now on their 7-day forecast. They do have, and this has all got to be from Delta. They do have. You see the 5 to 10 inch rains plus going into Louisiana, which is obvious. 3-inch plus rains reaching up into Kentucky, parts of western Kentucky and western Tennessee. But now, Joe, they have, the half an inch goes up to Albany, and the inch and a quarter to an inch and a half, southeast New York, southern Connecticut, most of Connecticut, Long Island, back through New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Then the rains get heavier in western Virginia, western North Carolina. So they're a little more bullish when it comes to with the rainfall now than they were on their last several forecasts from the folks at WPC. And in the west, you can see the heavy rains from the Pacific Northwest down into Northern California, and even some rain showing up into Central and Southern California, which will help the wildfires there, which have flared up, help quench the wildfires there, which have flared up once again.
I also see on the chat board right now, Mr. Blandino has arrived. Maybe he's been
Sal is beside himself, which over whether we will get some rain. Sal, I saw your messages. I did not get a chance to respond to them, but you can watch through this whole video and figure it out. But hold on to stay calm. And by the way, Joe, we're back up full screen now.
I might also point out that our Columbus Day is for Canada their Thanksgiving Day, so they don't want any kind of unsettled weather for Thanksgiving. But it looks like right now that most, if not all, of Delta's remnants will probably stay just south of the Canadian border, at least on Monday, regardless of what model you decide to side with or choose.
Sal says that he's praying for Delta's remnants not to get this far north late Sunday into the entire day of Columbus Day. I don't want late Sunday into the holiday ruined. Well, you know what? Pray very hard. Get yourself a St. Joseph statue, a St. Anthony statue, St. Patrick's. How about St. Swithin? Get a St. Swithin statue.
St. Swithin's Day, July 15th. And of course, if you have, incidentally, that reminds me, Joe, I posted this on my Facebook page, an interesting piece of information, climatological information. The 6th of October, over the last 60 years at Central Park, has been the calendar day with the least amount of precipitation. It has only rained or showered or precip 10 times out of the last 60 years. So the odds are that if you schedule something out of doors on this day, there's a fairly good chance, based upon at least 60 years worth of long-term records, that'll be dry. This is the day with the least amount of precipitation that has occurred over the last 60 some odd years.
Sorry for the buffering, folks, but we had an unstable signal that popped up in the middle of the show, so nothing I can do about that. My apologies. The chat is behind, I guess, because I'm reading folks mentioning about the buffering issue. Okay, so I think we pretty much covered it from start to finish. So let's take a look. I'm going to go back. I said we'd go back and take a look and see what the recon was up to. So let's do that. I'll bring the we'll see if they've gotten close enough to get um, a reading from the center. I'm thinking they're still probably not quite there yet. And well, yes, indeed. So, all right. So it looks like the pressure's leveled off on this first pass. It's around 955, 56 ish, or maybe a little higher than that. It's hard because the red line is the um, is the pressure. Blue is the flight level winds. Flight level winds 90 knots. 90 knots on the 10-meter wind. But remember, you don't know they're coming in from the northwest, so you're going to see the weaker winds there. You have to wait till they do several passes and they go around the other side to see what they've got. And on the graphic, uh, I'm seeing okay, stay still on the graphic, which usually runs a little bit behind. The graphic time is 23:48. It's actually pretty. It's only 4 minutes ago. I'm looking at the wind barbs, so I'm trying to see. So you see the thing is coming in from the north on the northwest side. So a lot of purple wind barbs, which is 64 to 83. And I think, well, it's hard to see because there might be some white wind barbs. I can't. I'm looking really close here. No, definitely some 83 to 96 knots on the flight level. I see those wind barbs there, but I don't see any 96 to 103. The wind goes northwest, and then you see it goes southwest, so that the center is right. They made the first pass. It's right here, okay? And in fact, if you look at the wind barbs, I'll take the wind barbs actually show that the winds all drop off right near the center. All of a sudden, you're down to under gale force. You got 30, 40 knots, 34 knots, and then it goes underneath that in that space that's in between the set of wind barbs that have northeast winds and then the set of wind barbs that have southwest winds. So we're getting the latest information now. And let's just really quick take a look at I'll bring up to see if they got the new advisory up. Should be the 8
The 8
o'clock.
o'clock.
The 8 o'clock. And the new advisory is not up. There is disturbed weather, by the way. They were following disturbed weather, then they stopped following it. But there is disturbed weather in the Eastern Caribbean that kind of looks like it's flared up again today. Whether they mention it or whether it does something down the road, but I did happen to notice, Joe, that the upper air winds across all of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico for late weekend, early next week, you have very light, very light upper air winds. So perhaps we could see conditions becoming conducive for development if that disturbed weather that is in the Eastern Caribbean winds up holding together as
That's the one
that
that
moves westward.
that's the one that's waiting for the new moon next week.
Right. I can really quick, with hopefully not risking the the live stream. Let's bring up the Canadian. I'm sorry, the Caribbean. But you can see the flare up of clouds and showers going on. It's disorganized in the Eastern Caribbean and over the Leeward Islands. So this is the system that's been kind of sitting out there for the last couple of days, and we'll have to see, what happens. Most of the clouds are blowing away to the northeast, so there's some wind shear going on there now. But if something survives out of that as it heads westward, then maybe that might wind up flaring up. But who knows? We'll see. We'll see as we go forward.
Sal Blandino
Um,
always Sal Blandino, always the optimist, points out that I just said that October 6th has the distinction of being the date least likely to have reported measurable rain at Central Park. That again, the last 60 years, um, there has been only 10 dates that have had measurable precipitation on this day, the 6th of October. No rain fell in the 17 years between 2002 and 2018. Sal has just posted that last year, October 6th, was a miserable day. It was cloudy, and we did have wet weather last year. And in fact, I did a little checking, and I found that yes, there was a brief evening shower that amounted to 1/100th of an inch at Central
Yeah, well,
Portio.
that's enough to make my life a living hell.
That was the first measurable rain last year to fall on this date since 2001. But Sal wants us all to know about it.
Oh, good Lord. So let's do a little bit of Briller Jeopardy. The chairman, Scott Briller, is still struggling with this whatever he picked up down in South Jersey, the bug that he picked up. Uh, the the cough has come back. He did get tested for COVID. He tested negative. I think he's going to probably ask for a retest because we know there are cases where you get false negatives and false positives. So we'll see. But he did. So of course we continue to wish him well, and hopefully he will be back on the board because everybody misses you, Scott. Okay,
Yes.
including Joe and I. So get this done, get better. All right, so we did leave me a Briller Jeopardy. How many legs does a lobster have?
How many legs does a lobster have?
Right.
Well, does a claw count as a leg?
I don't know.
I'm
I
I'm
never
gonna.
counted a lobster's legs.
It's a six. I'll say eight.
Close. 10.
10. You know what? I counted the claws, and I know on the side there's like three little things on each side. And I'm saying to myself, now there are two other protrusions in the back. I said, I'm not sure about that, so I'll leave them out. So,
Right.
and they
All right, so we all know Google, of course. So what was the original name for Google?
goggle. I don't know.
Unless you really did the research, would never come up with this. Back rub,
Really?
apparently, yes.
Before Google,
So I would be saying instead of saying Google something, I just Google it. You would say just back rub it. I mean,
before Google, before I discovered Google, I used to rely heavily on Ask.com, who had a trademark, Jeeves. I don't know if you ever
I
used
mean, Ask
Ask.com.
Jeeves, of course. That got bought out by somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as Jerry Seinfeld said, if you name a kid Jeeves when he's born, you pretty much have outlined or mapped out
What
his
he's going
life.
to, yeah, exactly. In the game of bingo, what number is represented by two little ducks?
I have, I've maybe played bingo 3 times or 4 times in my life. I wouldn't even begin to guess what it is.
Now, this actually takes me back to my youth because my grandfather. Now you got my grandfather was a very interesting man. He rarely spoke. My mother's here and she'll verify this. So my grandfather rarely spoke. But when he did, when he did, it was such an event. You'd listen. Okay, he was very quiet. He was a tall, lean man. He was like 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" ish. Um, and he rarely lost his temper. He had a very calm demeanor. But one thing he did know, and uh, it often would show up after at least a few glasses of wine, was that during Christmas and New Year's we would play an Italian version of bingo, which had 90 numbers, and each number was he would there would be a character of what the number looked like. So, for example, 22 is two little ducks. So, like if you envision 22 and to then kind of put in your mind two ducks standing side by side, you can kind of
Right.
you make out where they got that. So they would call out a number. So, for example, um, 89, 88, okay, was local, which meant a mouse with glasses. And then 89, right, was a mouse without glasses. Right, Mom? Was 89 senza l'occhiale? You remember?
I remember.
So there were certain numbers, like one number. Which number was La Disgrazia? You remember?
I think
Third.
it's
17. So they'd
and
pull out 17, and somebody would yell in Italian, 17, and you would hear this voice come out from nowhere, La Disgrazia, which meant the disgrace,
bad luck.
the bad luck, the disgrace. And this is what he would do. He was great. It's funny because these are the things you remember and the things you don't, the things that impact your life. But that was always brings happy smiles to my face because
I don't know why. I don't know why, but as you were telling that story, and again, I don't know why it popped into my head. I'm thinking about the Abbott and Costello routine with the dice.
right, a little Joe, right, exactly, yeah, a little Joe, right, exactly, yeah, boxcars. Do you know, by the way,
Let it ride.
now that you brought this up, do you know that I could I used to refer to 55 was double nickels,
Right.
66 was
And I
boxcars,
stole that from you, Joe.
right? And there's a whole bunch of those dice calls, and I used to use them. Do you know that they told me to stop using them when I was working on television?
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, why would you? I tell you, based upon, I unabashedly, I stole double nickels from
Yeah,
you,
no,
right?
which is
And
fine.
I used it in my bit at News 12 for God knows how many years. I was once our sports director, Walt Fowler. They had the Westchester Country Club golf tournament. A big golf tournament was happening there, and I had to do a story with Walt about how they forecast the weather in case there's lightning on the golf thing. I was pulled over on the way into the country club. I'm pulled over by a patrol car, and the guy comes out and he says, "I just want you to do one thing for me, Joe." I said, "What?" He says, "When it's 55 degrees, what is it out there?" And I said, "Double nickels." He said, "Double nickels, I love it, Joe.
Yeah.
You're my."
Right. So it's right.
And they told you to stop it.
Yeah.
This is they. When I say they, I'm talking about
Management. Well, yeah, at the time.
Why would they do that?
That's a conversation that I could have with you off camera. But let's just say that there was a certain person who had a problem with it, and
Oh well.
so you know where that goes. So yeah, 12, for example, is craps, boxcars, automatic craps, all the spots we got, outstanding in your field. I don't know how they got that from 6 and 6. Triple
Right.
dipple, in the lucky ducky, double saw on boxcars. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's see, an 8, so that'd be 4 and 4, was a square pair, a mom and
Right.
dad, and Ozzie and Harriet. The windows, 8 are from Decatur. All right. Let's see. 5 was after 5, the field's alive, 32 juice roll, or a little Phoebe. So a 4 was a little Joe, and a 5 was a little Phoebe.
Right.
All right. A 3 was an ace deuce. Ace caught a deuce. Winner on the dark side. 3 craps 3. The indicator. Small ace deuce can't produce. The other side of 11's tummy. And then, of course, a 2, which is a 1 and a 1 craps 2s, 2 aces, snake eyes. So yeah, yeah, double nickels couldn't do it. You can't say that.
New 8 p.m. update according to Timothy Veltman is up and still 145 mile per hour for Delta, 956 millibar central pressure.
All right. So that wraps up tonight's Joe and Joe weather show. So the next time you go to the Atlantic City or Las Vegas, make sure you look up all the names. So if you play on the craps table, you can impress everybody, or at least or they'll look at you like you're some kind of loser for doing that.
Quickly to Johnny Quest, there is a new comet. Believe it or not, the name is like the one we had over the summertime. Neowise. It was discovered by the same robotic telescope, but it's a tiny little thing and it's not expected to get very bright. Of course, that's what we said with the first NEOWISE, so we'll keep an eye on it, but it is expected to pass by the Earth, I think like 35 million miles in November. And one other thing, Joe, about the tomorrow, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the SPC. Most interesting, they have moderate risk of severe thunderstorm over upstate New York, and usually the moderate risk is surrounded by a relatively large area of general thunderstorm activity. The general thunderstorm activity is literally like 2 miles outside of the
You mean a marginal risk?
marginal
Marginal
risk.
risk. Here, I got the map up. Yeah, they got a marginal risk upstate New York, north of Albany, Vermont, New Hampshire, and into southern Maine.
Right, but you would think that would include
a general thunderstorm, but it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it just they draw the line and it stops.
Right.
Yeah, usually they have. Yeah, it's a time of year. So because when we look at that front for tomorrow, the precip cuts off sharply in southern New England and points south. I mean, we except for clouds, we may not see much of anything from it.
Right, and I'm going to give you a not a Briller Jeopardy, but a Friedlewitz or Friedelwitz Jeopardy.
Okay.
Rob Friedelwitz, who has an amazing website which contains all sorts of stuff about New York weather and statistical information. It's great. I'm going to ask you this question, Joe. When was the last time at Central Park, the last time we had temperatures hit or go above 80 degrees?
This year?
At Central Park this year. When was the last?
Well, we haven't done it in October, so that's right there. So the last time the high went above 80?
Correct.
I guess we have to go back sometime in mid-September.
Well, the last time it hit 80 plus at Central Park was September 10th.
Okay.
And Rob points out that although highs in the 80s and even the 90s occasionally occur in October, and last year we had a 93-degree reading on the 2nd of October, if 2020's final reading of 80 plus remains on September 10th, it'll be one of the earliest dates on record for this occurrence. In other words, no 80 after September the 10th. That's very, very unusual that we stopped right at that point that early in the season.
Well, we've had a lot of cool shots come down. This has been probably the most typical fall that we've seen in quite a few years. It actually arrived on time.
Right.
Christina Pedia asked me, by the way, Frank Riccio, it is 17. Frank Riccio points out 17 is, we weren't sure, but 17 is a bad luck number in Italian, la disgrazia. So Christina Pedia asked me, how did I do on the Preakness? Well, here's the thing about what happened with the Preakness. Swiss skydiver, the filly, very good filly, by the way, very, very good filly. She was morning line 5-2. Okay. And oftentimes when fillies run in boys' races, they get bet heavily and they don't always offer value. So I thought that 5-2 was just too low a price to take on her. So I actually didn't pay any attention to the race until after it was over. I looked and saw that not only did Swiss Skydiver win, but she didn't go off as a 5-2 or less. She went off at 11-1 and paid $26. So the moral of the story is that I should probably have paid attention more when it comes to this sort of stuff. But yeah, I really didn't pay too much attention to the race after I saw who was running it. I saw her in there. She was 5-2. I didn't think it was worth putting a bet down for 5-2. And she winds up paying, going off at 11-1, which was a great price for that horse.
I totally forgot. My wife and I, we always get, there's a brief surge of excitement. Oh, turn on Channel 4. The race is coming on, for the Kentucky Derby and for the Belmont. Totally forgot that the Preakness was this past weekend.
Yeah, exactly, because there's no build-up to it. There was no build-up. Right. The races will run completely out of order, and there's no crowds. It's everything this year has an asterisk next to it. And Timothy Beltman says, I'm being a bad boy promoting dice gambling on the news with his double nickels and boxcars. Listen, with all the sins that are occurring across the globe these days, me mentioning about playing dice Timothy, I don't think it's too big a deal. So, Oh, good. You won 1270. So I only went. Oh, Christinapedia won 1270. So she only ended up down $18. All right.
Uh,
Well, I would just be careful with that sort of math. If you carry it out in the long term, you're gonna wind up with very little. But hey, at least you cut your losses, which is a good thing. All right,
they
Joe. Coming up on.
they ran a couple of days, they ran a couple of days ago on one of the early episodes of the Flintstones, where Fred and Barney they take their
Bet, bet,
savings
bet,
and
bet,
they
bet,
put it
bet,
on.
bet.
No. This is one with they put it on gravel pit, and some southerner comes by and he says, "Did you bet on gravel pit, boy? If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times. Don't bet on the races." That was his tip.
Oh, too funny.
They were going to use the money. They were going to use the money to buy a pool hall, Boulder Dams.
Oh. Oh, God. All right, let's hang it up here. Thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening. It's one of our longer shows. So if you didn't hang around or you tuned in late, the podcast will be up in about an hour, and you can watch it. I'm sorry, you can listen to it. You can find the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole host of other places where podcasts call home. Have a great day. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Good night, Mr. Rayo.